Yoram Hazony, author of Conservatism, A Rediscovery. Welcome to the UK.
Thank you very much.
What brings you here, and what do you hope to achieve to affect the political landscape here in Britain with your National Conservative project?
Well, there's a couple of things happening. And first of all, my new book has come out in a UK edition, published by Swift Forum. It's a new publishing house, and it's a beautiful cover. So I'm here to sell it. That's what authors do, right?
Yes.
But beyond that, I think it's a dramatic moment for British politics. Like the United States, we're now about 2 years into the cultural revolution of woke neo-Marxism in Britain, and we're a few years into Brexit, into the restoration of Britain's independence from foreign powers, and the idea that the British people are going to determine their own course and their own fate. These are very dramatic things, both the Brexit part and the neo-Marxist cultural revolution. And the Tories are, I think, still searching for their way. We saw in 2019 a Conservative Party that seemed to be on the verge of embracing a kind of nationalist conservatism that would lead the way culturally, traditionally, and politically, but it hasn't happened yet. It's still being thought about. It's still in formation, and thankfully there are many articulate and impressive intellectuals and activists here in London who are interested in the question of, is national conservatism the way forward for the Conservative Party and for the UK? I'm happy to try my best to persuade them.
So, in a nutshell, then, what is national conservatism, and how does it differ from the mix of economic, social, and secular liberalism which currently drives the Conservative Party?
Well, the easiest way to think about this is to see national conservatism as the opposite of liberal internationalism. I mean, that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it is true that for a generation, the major parties in the UK, as in America and across Europe, were committed to this liberal idea of a borderless world in which there'd be some kind of governance of world institutions and bodies, and the nation state would effectively disappear, and the cultural and religious inheritance of Britain would evaporate into kind of a concern for humanity, kind of a John Lennon vision. It's astonishing, but the leaders of the West believed in this John Lennon vision. They thought that the world was really going to end up that way, and it's simply not true. Nationalist conservatism is the response of both thinking people and people who are not scholars but are attached to their way of life and the way of life of their ancestors and the values and traditions of their ancestors. So a national conservative is somebody who is not a liberal, in that he or she understands that the nation is important, that the traditions of the nation are important, and this cashes out in particular political policies. For example, if you believe that the nation is important, then you have to worry about the cohesion of the nation, that internal rivalries, which there will always be, are not so vicious that the ability of the nation, the mutual loyalty that holds it together, falls apart. So, for example, a liberal policy of allowing manufacturing to be offshored, in the name of private property and free enterprise, to be offshored to China or to some other foreign country, leaving your fellow countrymen without proper employment, but I think even more than that, feeling humiliated and abused. This is not a good national conservative policy, and a national conservative policy would be one that would take into account all of the sectors of the nation and find an appropriate balance so that they're working together in a healthy way.
What sort of reception have you received? What sort of reception have you had, rather, in the Conservative Party? Have you been meeting with MPs? Have they warmed to you, or have they been resistant to your ideas?
There have been meetings with MPs, and some of them are warm, and some of them are thinking about it. But this is definitely a change of atmosphere. I think a couple of years ago, this wouldn't have happened. And in addition to parliamentarians, my colleagues and I have been meeting with writers and journalists and academics who are also influential in these circles.
Let's pivot to a particular issue then. So despite promising to reduce immigration at every electoral juncture for the last 12 years, it has continued to skyrocket under Conservative governments, under Cameron first, then under May, under Johnson, and it was due to do so as well under Truss. What is the the distinctly national conservative response to the typical liberal argument that high levels of immigration are, one, an economic imperative, and two, serve to enrich society? Why do borders matter?
Well, look, there are certain economic advantages to immigration. It lowers labor costs, but lowering labor costs is not the only goal of a conservative government. Maybe it's the only goal of a liberal government, but if you have a conservative government, as I said before, your concern is for the cohesion, the fellow feeling of the entire nation. And that doesn't necessarily dictate a particular immigration policy, but let's say that the mutual loyalty among different parts of a society that develops over generations can be upset by large-scale immigration of people who are not part of that social bond. So liberals tend to ignore this. They think, anyone can simply come from any part of the world and join our society, and they'll be happy with their freedom, and freedom is enough, and so they'll be loyal to the society, and the society will be loyal to them. I think this is pure mythology. I think that societies are capable of absorbing immigration in a fruitful way if the numbers are sufficiently small so that the immigrants are capable of assimilating rather than turning into a completely independent society. And the immigrants also have to be of a certain kind. They have to be motivated to assimilate. If you don't have that, then diversity is not your strength. Diversity can also mean increasing social tension, violence, abuse in both directions, and in an uncontrollable disintegration and mutual resentment. I think that where Britain stands right now, with roughly 15% of the population being foreign-born, that's a very, very large proportion of the public. And I think national conservatives would certainly feel that at this point it's appropriate to make a change.
In my view, since Robert Peel, the Conservative Party has been a very pragmatic organism. It has tended to make peace with the spirit of the age while conserving what it can as a sort of patriotic national party. So you could say in a way that there is a direct line of continuity between Peel's repeal of the Corn Laws and David Cameron's passage of same-sex marriage, there is that sort of constant acceptance. There seems to be that all we can really do is sort of manage the forces of modernity. We can't redirect them or reform them. So in your view, does the intensity of the culture war mean that that highly pragmatic approach is outdated? And do national conservatives need to be more forthright, more offensive, more counter-revolutionary?
Well, you're certainly right that that one of the beauties of the English conservative tradition is the clear understanding that you get in this series of great thinkers from Fortescue to Selden and Hale and Clarendon and so forth, all the way up to Burke and beyond. All of them are, in a sense, pragmatists, I would say, in a very particular way. Not that they, that they're unprincipled, but rather they understand that the role of government is to find an appropriate balance among competing principles. So that certainly is a part of the conservative inheritance, and it's crucial. On the other hand, very central to this line of thinkers is the concept of restoration. This begins with the understanding that all human things decay, that all institutions and frameworks and systems run down. What that means is that the conservative is not, sometimes people think a conservative is someone who takes whatever exists and tries to freeze it. This is absolutely not true. The conservative understands that things run down. That means that they will go off course. There will be decay. And that means that a conservative has to be always looking to restoration, to understanding what has gone wrong and what is the point at which it went wrong, so that we can attempt to restore something that used to work. Now, you can never do a 100% restoration. It's impossible to do that. But in the hands of skilled leadership, a restoration can save the important earlier principles while making certain accommodations to reality and create something that's much stronger. So at the moment, we have an awful lot of accommodation going on, and it's frankly somewhat shocking to see that even in the Conservative Party in the UK, that there are supporters of various aspects of the woke neo-Marxist program. So this is obviously crazy. The role of the Conservative Party has to be to understand what has gone wrong, and things have gone terribly wrong, and to seek to reform and restore what used to work.
You mentioned Burke there, and as you know very well, and as you write in your book, Conservatism, A Rediscovery, one of Burke's powerful points, which he got from Selden and from some of his predecessors, was that the practical wisdom bestowed by customs, traditions, and social norms as they have evolved over the centuries, they are a more reliable guide to political life than just tearing it all down. That kind of radicalism, which tries to create utopia from first principles, produced the bloodshed of the French Revolution, against which Burke railed, of course. But the question for our own age, once a nation has lost contact with these customs, with these traditions, and with these social norms, as seems to be the case in the liberal West, how do you go about restoring them, if not by some sort of authoritarian overhaul?
Well, and I'm doubtful that authoritarian overhaul is a way of restoring things. I mean, an actual restoration requires in the end, it requires some kind of new settlement. It requires the establishment of norms which at least a majority of the public have to support. Right? Maybe not every last part of society, but a majority are going to have to support the restoration of these norms. And dictators are not especially good at that. What I would say is we need to look at two levels. There's the personal level and the national level. I think conservatives do not talk enough about the personal level, because if you lead a liberal life, if the life that you lead is not a life of family and congregation, inheritance and transmission, learning from your elders what the common sense is and what the boundaries are. If you don't live like that, your capacity to be, a great conservative statesman or the editor of a great conservative paper is going to be limited. Everybody around you knows that in fact you're a liberal, and you declare certain conservative principles, but you're a liberal. And so to begin with, there's also a question of personal restoration, a personal repentance, and understanding that it's not just that the left has done all of these terrible things. We could talk, all day and all night about all the terrible things that the left has done and will do. But the real question is, what have the conservatives done wrong? If we can't reform the conservatives, we can't reform the UK and the West beyond it. So this begins with a personal restoration, which is going to mean things like marriage and children and honoring your parents and joining a congregation, even though you may feel that a little strange at first, but becoming a part of a congregational community where the life of conservation and transmission is in fact taking place, that has to happen at the personal level. And where that's happening at the personal level, then you begin to have the possibility of national leadership that knows what it's talking about, that is not simply, a bystander gawking at these remarkable institutions that Britain maintains, the monarchy and the House of Lords and the common law and the established church. All of these things can be deeply meaningful and important, but what we're doing is we're emptying them of all meaning, because liberalism has no need for any of this. So a national restoration in Britain could be something spectacular, but it requires reinfusing the appropriate meaning in all of these institutions. That means taking steps that are going to be steps that a majority will support, but steps that liberals will think are reactionary.
Yoram Hazony, author of Conservatism, A Rediscovery, thank you for agreeing to talk to me on Occasional Dialogues.